This is the ideal family, seemingly, and everything went terribly wrong.
We may never know what made David Crowley finally snap. Certainly the conspiracy theorists will fill in some of those gaps.
10 things that prove David Crowley is innocent.
He just lost his way, financially lost his way, life, stress.
David's blood is not on any bullets. His DNA is only on one, item 57. Police could not find a motive. David was planning for the future. David had a working deal with Michael Entertainment Group to turn Gray State into a TV series.
We didn't fire David, or we didn't get rid of David, or however that went, and he didn't walk away from us. I mean, there was never any of that.
David was wounded as evidenced by the blood on the magazine. The lack of David's prints at the crime scene. There is no evidence David committed suicide.
Well, a poet once said, the purest products of America go crazy. And David Crowley went crazy, and David Crowley documented his own life and did it in such a way that makes me feel he knew that there was an ultimate end use for the thing.
This is a person that was not thinking clearly, committed a horrible act by taking those lives. And his mind at that point was deranged. He just was not in a normal state. He wasn't thinking rationally.
It almost embodied him, almost to the extent of where it would dictate a lot of his thoughts and his ideas and his, I guess, outlook in reality.
He looked like he literally was eat, sleeping, and breathing on his computer. Failure was not an option for him.
As you sit here today, a year later, do you have an idea of what those final moments looked like?
It was horrifying. You have a tragic loss of an entire family. It looks like David snapped and took the lives of his wife and daughter, and then ultimately himself. And it was a very sad scene, you know, during the holidays, a beautiful family, and just tragically lost.
The rear slider was open 1/4 inch.
4933 rear slider is unlocked, slightly ajar.
Copy, rear slider, unlocked, slightly ajar.
The initial reports here was that it was a murder-suicide. I have reports that some investigators may be calling this suspicious at this point. That may just be, you know, people hoping that it's suspicious. But I'm hearing that it may be suspicious, and I also have heard that there is reports of a sliding door that was left unlocked. I don't know how much you can say about the investigation. I know you're following it closely. What can you tell us about that?
The only thing I can confirm on right now is obviously the investigation's ongoing. I haven't seen the reports about it being suspicious on it. Until we get the full amounts, the full actual report from the police and what they've come to it, I haven't really, and from what we're getting from, like I said, from communication with the family and from some other individuals I'm not going to name, who are kind of coming forth with their own story, I'm just gonna probably just stick to it as what the examiner said, as it being a murder-suicide at this point right now.
Anyone could have entered or exited without forced entry.
Who wrote Allah Akbar on the wall?
He did.
He did it. I mean, there's no denying it.
In her blood?
Yes.
Why did he do that?
We believe that was just kind of a parting shot.
To who?
Probably at her for having a Muslim past.
That, I believe, that's David being sarcastic. That's him possibly throwing a jab.
A jab at Kamel's family?
Possibly.
There is no evidence to show David wrote Allahu Akbar on the living room wall. If David didn't write it, who did? More importantly, if police know they cannot prove David wrote the blood writing, why are they blaming David for it?
But we have no idea what pushed him over the edge.
Right, we don't know what the trigger was, what was the breaking point.
Investigators spent months sifting through 20 terabytes of video David Crowley had kept on more than a dozen hard drives, looking for clues.
How much of this do you think had to do with the film?
I think a great deal. From all accounts, he was consumed with producing this film, and it was a dark topic. You're talking about conspiracy theories and potentially the fall of society, and if you're focusing on that day in and day out, and those are materials you're working with, and you're filming exclusively on that topic, that can take you to a very bad place.
So you think he literally went down the rabbit hole of these conspiracy theories and just couldn't separate himself from it?
I believe so.
And the Crowley case certainly fit the pattern of domestic violence.
Kamel was everything to David. And if there was no Kamel, there is no David.
According to hundreds of pages of police reports, no one ever saw David physically abuse his family.
There is no suicide note.
Danny, let me ask you about this, because there is a report that's out now from, I believe it's Canada Free Press. And an interviewer who had Danny on a show says that, and this was back in 2012, so it was a little while ago, but says he had Danny on the show and he was talking to him pre-interview, and in that pre-interview conversation, he jokingly said something about, Danny, I hope you don't have any thoughts of suicide, and he was joking about it in reference to Andrew Breitbart dying and Michael Hastings dying, and just saying off the cuff, I hope that, essentially, I hope you're not killed over this project. And he says that David had responded to him and said that no, he had no feelings of suicide and he had no suicidal thoughts. And so they had talked about this prior to the interview. I'm just wondering if you've seen that report and if you can comment on that at all.
That I can't comment, because I don't know, and I don't totally, I'm not familiar with the interview on it, so I won't be able to comment on.
That would be news to you. You weren't familiar with that conversation prior to.
I'm not. No, I wouldn't. The only part of that conversation I would have been familiar with would have been on what would have taken place during the part of the interview. I know that knowing David, any point, of the suicide and the extreme of the tragedy doesn't, like I said, it doesn't, for us, it still doesn't make sense.
Danny, I just want to ask you this. Did you guys ever have this conversation? And the reason I ask that is because, look, I've been asked this question many times before. A lot of people have asked me dozens and dozens of times, do you feel safe? Do you worry about being killed for what you're doing? They jokingly say, are you suicidal? And they don't say it making a joke out of suicide. They say it, in reference to Andrew Breitbart. They say it in reference to Michael Hastings. And they say, look, I hope that you are safe in what you're doing. And so they ask the question, you're not feeling suicidal, are you? I'm just wondering, did you guys ever have this conversation about him fearing for his life, feeling threatened? Is that a conversation about death that you guys ever had?
We've had that conversation early on it, and this is when, but then there was a period when David started putting distance between his friends and his family on it, and that I know that he was going through a personal transition, and I don't know if he was battling a lot of the bigger questions on spiritualism and his placement within society, and also as a filmmaker. So I don't know if that part, but the discussions that we had before, I know that he wouldn't be suicidal because David was one of the strongest guys I've ever met before in my life, not only intellectually but just physically all around. When you think of alpha males, he was like to the T of that. So that's why, and like I said, for me to say that it was a suicide and dual murder, it's hard enough to actually have those words come out of my mouth. Do I truly believe that? I mean, I'm gonna look at the reports. I'm very analytical. I know David, but at the same time, I gotta look at the bigger picture and all the facts, and from the information that's coming in and what David was doing and kind of where he was emotionally at that time. Some of it is up to speculation because the contact with him became less and less in the course of a couple months ago, and that just wasn't me. It was his family and his friends on the same time. So
what Mr. Alam said to me was, he goes, "I can't believe how the Apple Valley Police would rush to a judgment that soon without knowing the facts."
To have a suicide note, first you have to prove David wrote one with his handwriting. Even if we assume the handwritten note in the office was written by David, it is not a suicide note. Police never call this a suicide note, and rightfully so. There is blood all over the notepad, and there is a bloody print matching David's left middle finger. Now there is blood all over the notepad, and there is one bloody print matching David's left middle finger. But does that prove David Crowley wrote Open the Rise most recent version, Submit to Allah Now? These are the 10 reasons, but there are many more.
Apple Valley police also know that despite thousands of hours of forensic work, they'll be accused of a cover-up. If life can imitate art, so can death. David Crowley leaving behind a legacy of paranoia, revealing just how dark the gray states can be.
As the Crowleys became increasingly isolated last year, their family made multiple attempts to reach out and help them emotionally and financially. Family members on both sides declined to talk on camera. Quite frankly, they're afraid they'll be harassed by some of these conspiracy theorists out there.
I can see how getting that news out and people relating that I'm not suicidal, and with a lot of people who are within the world of conspiracy and saying that he was, outed by the government. I don't think he actually was outed by the government on this because of, like I said, the relationship and you being an outsider and us being close family. But I know that we're working thoroughly on investigating it, and we know that we have a long road ahead of us. And it's going to take a lot for us to fully digest the actual claim of a murderous-suicide at that point. So, yeah, until I get all the facts in, and I know that his family feels the same way, and I know his close friends feel the same way. Like everybody else, it still doesn't sit right because we don't want to believe it in it, and but we just don't want people to do anything stupid on it and use it for a justification for some other tragedy.
This has nothing to do with Islam, but everything to do with a man that lost his way and ultimately killed his wife, his daughter, and then himself.
What Werner Herzog brought to this project for me was a constant reassurance that I wasn't completely crazy in pursuing this project. And the problem is, if you're looking to Werner Herzog for a reality check on craziness, you may be kind of in the wrong orbit. And in this project, I went through everything, and I had a small team of editors who were putting together the various sequences from Crowley's archive. So we just sort of saw what was there, and then we became familiar with this vast amount of footage. I call this the feel-bad film of 2017. There is no easy, tidy ending where everything sorts out, we all sing Kumbaya, and the Wookiee gets a medal at the end of the film. It's not that. It's meant to be chewed over. It's meant to be watched twice. It's meant to be dissected. It's meant to be analyzed. And anyone's analysis of what happened is probably as good as mine. What we've done is tried to present, in essence, the story in as true a fashion as we can and let the audience or the viewer decide what they take away from it.
I want to reinstate that he was coming up with a couple of new directions for what he wanted to proceed with Grace State. And when he gets in that mode, I just let him get in that mode. And I've been with him in that part of that mode when he gets kind of into the creative state, and it's one of those things you gotta let him be, let him process, let him getting all the things down that he wants to show you, so he's able to actually explain it to you fully without you asking questions, and then him becoming frustrated on it because, like I said, his mind works like 1,000 miles an hour.
Cut crew.
We cut crew from the budget.
You had a budget?
See, now you're hitting on my main point.
The more that Dave and Mitch apply their knowledge to the marketing aspects, it makes it comparable to huge budget features, and it draws the eye.
The trailer is almost secondary to the concept push itself. We are generating something like 25 behind the scenes videos. They're pushing this concept, showing that, yeah, we planned for this and we did this and this is what you get. And this is no budget. And we've already passed a lot of local films on Facebook in popularity. We're in hibernation. If we approach an investor with a completed trailer and we have 10,000 Facebook fans, a movement behind it, that's already a sale. Once the red carpet gets rolled out for this New World Order program, everything is free game. The bastard of it all is that you've heard of everything. Americans believe that they can't do anything. And day by day, they're becoming correct. It's a game of numbers, and we're losing.
I think Grace State would definitely run into some problems because they're pushing the envelope. With anything that's pushing the envelope or trying to get a message out there that maybe not everybody agrees with, you're going to have some things you're running with.
I think it's going to go over well with whomever you show it to.
I think it'll go over well with them. Whether they want to actually give us money to do it, who knows?
For David, I think he was in the most furthest state of decomposition. When the body starts to get mummified the way that he was, that, and from the things that I have seen, is not 3 weeks worth of decomposition. They were in, I would say, maybe a week to maybe a week and a half, from what I've seen personally, into decomp, with the bloating, the skin slippage, things of that nature. David was way too far into his decomposition. If I had to put a timeline on him, he would have been more 3 to 4 weeks into his decomp, because that's when you start to see the mummification. He had mild bloating in the abdomen not mild, but he had the bloating in the abdomen.
It was mild, yeah. It didn't get to the point, as you know, they will push, but he wasn't nowhere near that stage.
There was no putrefaction. There was lack of fluids that the body will expel. It's called purging. I didn't see that really in all three of them. The lack of blood also really kind of set wrong with me, especially for murder, suicide, because I've seen that personally with my own 2 eyes multiple times.
Where does the project stand? What can you speak to as far as that goes? What do people need to know about where it goes from here? Because this project obviously bigger than just you or even just David. It is a project and a labor for a lot of folks. Just wondering what you can tell us as far as the future of Gray State.
For all the fans who've been supporting us, we couldn't have done it with, without the help with you guys. I know that we're going to be, and this is going to be also the representatives of Gray State, for our own personal dealing with the matter and coping and making sure we're at a good spot. We're going to go black for a while until we can fully understand where the direction is going to be. Because a lot of the vision behind Gray State was David, and we don't know how to, until the extent we can get the full idea where David wanted to go with it. I want to get to that point and then make sure we can stick and make the purest, best vision that David wanted for it. Because that's what David deserves, 100%. I mean, there shouldn't be any kind of sidestepping that at all. I think there will be something that will come from this. I don't know what it will be right now, but I know that we won't stop at it. I know that it will take, the Gray State will take a new shape and form, but we won't compromise. I know that, because I won't in general, because I feel like I'll be compromising a good friend and a visionary, and that's what David was.
Now, another thing that I want to kind of go a little bit further what Sophia was just asking, because on David's autopsy, it clearly states marked autolysis, and Kamel and Rania are just autolysis. Now, in the medical field, and I'm assuming it's the same for you, words mean something. So when they put marked, it's for a reason. So they're saying that they've noticed it's more advanced. Is that what you would expect? Is that your understanding as well?
That is my understanding. Words definitely do mean something when they are, when they're different. If you've got a whole case like in this instance, where you've got one victim that has that marked, in there, and the other ones don't, that's very telling that he had more than the others. Which again, in my opinion, just my opinion, he was first.
Yeah, and that's what we've been saying. Sophia and I have been saying this for a long time, and again, we've taken a lot of heat, but we've been reading these reports and looking at the photos, but really, when you pay attention to what's being said, they're telling you the order. So that's why we're very vocal going, no, wait a minute, David died first, not Kamel, not Ronnie, David did. So if he died first, how did he kill them? And yet we can't get any answers from anybody like that. Instead, we get poo-pooed and made fun of and said, oh, you guys are crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, wait a second. So when you offered to come on, you have no idea how happy you made us. We're like, hey, somebody who knows. Not that we were expecting you to say what we were saying, but we knew you were going to say what we were saying, because in the medical field and how death goes, it only goes a certain way.
It can't go one or the other. It is very specific how it happens, no matter who you are, no matter how you passed, the stages of decomp and disposition, it's all the same.
I was able to touch base with him, left him a message, and to my surprise, he gave me a call back, and we chatted on the phone for 37 minutes one afternoon, and he was real open and forthcoming. And at the end, he asked me, directly, do you think David did this? I said, I don't think he did. I said, I don't know who did, but I don't personally believe that David pulled the trigger. And he says, well, I said, now, are you interested in investigating this case? He said, I'll tell you what, he's got a lot of faith along with the family, and he says, regardless if David did it or not, I can still sleep well at night knowing that whoever did this will have to face God. And that will be that person's biggest issue. So he goes, I'm not concerned here on this earth to find out who did it or not, or in fact, who did it. He goes, I've got a daughter and a granddaughter that I cannot get back. I never will. If I had time and money, would I investigate it? He goes, yes, I would. But he goes, I don't have time. I don't have funds. But he goes, if I had both of those things, I would certainly be investigating this case because it doesn't add up. He agrees with our group, and I think with Greg mostly. He, along with the Crowleys, it sounds like, are waiting for this report to come out along with us. He says, I have no reason to really go against what I've heard so far from them, but I'm waiting, just like you are, to see what the police have to say about this. So he hasn't been told. The Crowley's parents haven't been told. I don't believe. I think they've been given some parameters of what more than likely took place, but I don't believe law enforcement gave them details at all, so they're still in the dark too, and that's why they've been quiet, he thinks, is why you haven't heard anything from the Crowleys or the Alams, because they haven't been given anything to chew on. They're waiting, as we are, to see what the final result is. Then once this report comes out, that's final, and marked closed, and everything's finalized, then you might hear the uproar from the families if they agree with it or not. But right now he says there's really nothing to say on a public statement or to go public with anything because we don't know what happened.
Could it be that they're just really taking their time to make sure they really get their story straight because they know there's a spotlight on this whole case, and there's people like us who's going to be picking apart the official story once it's released, so they want to make sure that they don't have to backtrack on something they said in an official investigation. They want to make sure they have all their bases covered, and maybe someone in federal law enforcement or maybe someone has spoken to some of the investigators to tell them to make sure that they have to be very careful with this case about what type of information is released. I believe it's something along those lines.
Mr. Alam did not speak to any of the family. Sidra was the sole person dealing with everything. Miss Alam was really sick at the time, and they were in Dallas in another hospital. So Sidra basically told Mr. Alam, don't worry about anything. I'll take care of it. You worry about Mom. Her husband will take care of the businesses. She'll handle all of this. So that was what was decided.
Do you think that any of that was encouraged by the Gray State team?
I believe when the whole documentary thing happened, yes, I think they took advantage of Sidra, her being naive and wanting to see the good in everyone, which, I mean, even from certain things that had happened and while I was there, I kept telling her, just don't trust everybody. And, it stuck out to me, especially with Mason Hendricks. He really didn't want Mr. Alam on the documentary. He kept pushing for just Sidra. He even told her not to tell Mr. Alam about this documentary. He put her in a position where she was very, she didn't know what to do. But yeah, I definitely think they kind of liked that they were just dealing with Sidra and not Mr. Alam. Because in all reality, if Mr. Alam had been dealing with all this would have been a whole nother thing. It wouldn't have transpired to all of this. It wouldn't have gotten to this, especially with the documentary.
I interviewed the Colorado Springs medical examiner. His name was Dr. Leon Kelly. Now, a lot of this was to help other people, but because I was asking him about the decomposition, and he said, and I asked him to explain the mummification and tell me if you have seen or heard of this. He explained it as if hands and feet are bare and they're near an object like paper or something that will wick away the moisture out of the skin, plus the fact that the hands and feet are thinner. There's not as much adipose, and it's just basically almost skin and bones. But we know there's tissue and there's, well, he said for him that explains the mummification, but he said that their time of death was 4 to 7 days for Kamal and Rania. But he said 10 days at most. He goes, I wouldn't put it past 2 weeks. He said because they were be able to do the slicing of the organs, and the organs had not yet liquefied, and only some of the internal cavities had partial decomp fluid in them. But when you're trying to tell people that no, the way this body is, we still have organs that are intact that can be sliced and put on, look at under a microscope. They're not advanced.
Right. Yeah, no, I would say in my experience seeing someone in a severely advanced state of decomposition, most of the biological tissue is non-existent.
And just know that it could be a little while, but it's not going to stop us in our tracks. Right now, we just have to take some time so we can grieve and just, take care of ourselves first. Because if we don't, then what we try to come out with the idea with Grace Day and the vision that David had will not even come close to it. And the last thing I want to do, and everybody else associated with part of the team, we do not want to let the fans down and not get what we wanted to out originally if David was around.
All this buzz that people have for Gray State, we didn't start it. We just started shooting. We started doing a scene here, a scene there, involving people that we wanted, and it just generated from there.
The people who have worked on Gray State already are like evangelists. I kid you not.
The more people that were brought on to Gray State, the more they started talking about it and publicizing it, and it just became this huge buzz. Like, tell me more about Gray State. Hey, how can I get on that set?
People working on feature films being shot during the same time. The cast and crew on that feature film was talking about Gray State.
I think everybody's in anticipation.
But we knew we had to use that hype for our own good and push that, because we knew it being successful was going to be built on word of mouth and grassroots.
The things that we're showing, the things that we're saying are appealing to people, and it's making it a very popular idea.
I think people are finally seeing a film that it's a direct reflection of what reality is actually becoming. And I think people are, at this point, are extremely happy and excited for a project like this to show that.
We have generated this concept that has resonated with people. With just the promise of a concept trailer, we're competing with other local feature films that have already got their budget, already shot, and they're on the downslope already. We're looking at the upslope.
I can't see Gray State not being a success. It's definitely gonna knock it out of the park.
It will get funded, it will be shot, and it will be made.
This is the rise. We're just starting out. That is my favorite part about Gray State, is that I hardly need to sell the concept.
Herein lies the biggest issue with all of this, with his passion, Greg's passion, and Dan's passion, Dan Hennon, and the rest, is that the chances of actually getting the truth, actually having justice for David Crowley are pretty slim, and that sucks. Okay, so why would they off this guy? Well, A, he did 3 tours. B, he was a veteran and became awake to what was going on. And C, he had the funding. So supposedly this guy lost his mind and decided to kill himself, his young daughter, and his wife right after he got the funding to make this movie, which would show nothing you've seen on Netflix, nothing you've seen on Prime, nothing you've seen will expose what he was exposing. Because he was showing you straight up, and this was the scariest thing I think to people, was that they're watching your every move. They're watching you through your devices. And they called people like Alex Jones nuts for talking about this. And that was a fact. But they were showing you there's actually people in the room. Anyway, again, I got to calm down, because it's been a long time since I had a chance to talk to this. But what David Crowley was going to expose what was more than the general public probably could handle.
What got me so thrilled about this whole thing was when the police went into the house and they didn't even look up into the ceiling near the doorway where there was a bullet hole.
Oh, working on Gray State was such a positive experience, and I was so glad to be a part of it. And I hope, sincerely, that we can move on to a feature film where I can work with these guys day in and day out and be a part of a really exciting process.
I'd like to see him get it made and have it actually go somewhere and be noticed as being something that got made in Minnesota. And wow, they pulled something off with nothing.
I think so much work has gone into a concept trailer because they believe in what they're writing about.
I know with David and Mitch as filmmakers, they wanted to do a lot of things and they wanted to push the barrier and the envelope as much as possible.
So, Eric, we do have that 911 call in the private chat here in StreamYard.
I got to get my freaking recorder ready, man. So I can record it too right now.
You know, if they wait any longer to do this film, they're not going to be able to find anybody they could even see after all these people getting vaxxed and all that shit.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to be able to use a camera.
I've thrown it out there with Greg. You know, Greg, how can we pick this script up? And you know,
I really think once his name gets cleared, it'll be a green light.
You think it will?
Yep.
Police and fire, I'm
Yep, coming through loud and clear.
Yes, this is Judy Procknell, and I live at 1055 Ramsdale Drive.
Yes.
I think there's been a murder or suicide next door.
What's going on?
Well, wait.
What? Can we pause? What? What? Hold on. What? I think there's been a murder, suicide. She really just said that. My bad. I should just let it play. That's the part.
It could happen. I mean, I could see the people I know. I could see that happening, but it does sound fishy. I mean,
I think there's been a murder. Okay.
Yes, this is Judy Procknell, and I live at 1055 Ramsdale Drive.
Yes.
I think there's been a murder or suicide next door.
What's going on?
Well, we've noticed that they haven't been around, and there were Christmas presents on the stoop. So I went over there, and there's a dog in the house, and there's definitely some bodies in the living room.
Oh, okay. Stay on the line with me just a minute. Do you know what their address is?
1055, and they would be to the west of me.
Okay, the house. So,
1050 or whatever.
okay, so if I'm facing and looking at your house, Judy, would it be the house to the right or the left?
And look at those Christmas presents. They've never been touched, and they're still wrapped.
They've been there for how long?
Well, those were actually stacked up. So those are not how Colin Procknell found them. Colin Procknell said that they were actually scattered, and so he goes up to the door and he stacks them up. And then he's well, first like, oh, maybe I'll take them back home. Then
because we always go to our neighbor's house and stack their packages.
Yeah, stack them up.
Got it.
Yeah.
The neighbor came over and stacked them back up because that was one of my points of contention a while back. Was the fact that how could they just be still stacked like that after 2 weeks in the winter, you know? So
in the wind,
and that even makes it goofier. I went over and I restacked their bag. Look at you, stacked them all nice. Got the this is insanity. Yeah. Now, Greg, at what point did the neighbors say they went and stacked them up? Is that they stacked them up and then looked through the window, and that's exactly when this, okay? So they stacked them up like that, and then looked at got it. Thank you. Yep.
Right. What are you seeing in there?
It looks like there's a pile of bodies, and one, like the head is eaten off.
Oh, no.
Oh.
Killed by the dog. And
again, from the crime scene photos that I've seen with the limited vision we can see from the bodies, you cannot be able to see that. I'm overanalyzing. This is insane. We're only a minute through, Greg. Thank you. I cannot thank you enough.
This is Judy, and I live at 155 Ramsdale Drive. Yep. I think there's been a murder or suicide next door. Okay, why would she say that? Do you know what their address is? Well, I'm 1055 and they would be to the west of me. Okay, so how so? So like 1050 or whatever. So she doesn't know the address?
I mean, it's right there on the front door.
To the right? What are you seeing there? It looks like there's been a pile of bodies and one looked like the head is eaten off.
Whoa. Eaten off. Not chopped off. Yeah. Not missing. Eaten off.
Not blown off by
right. Not blown off. Anything you could say. Eaten off. Got it.
Dog did it.
Right, of course.
Oh no, Judy. I suppose
Wait a minute, dog's not gonna eat the head off. It's gonna eat everything but the. Oh my god, there is a skull on the. Anyway.
2 heads, by the way.
I know. I suppose by the dog and I jumped. My husband thought they were dummies, but the hands looked real, inaudible, and they looked, and they would have been there since before Christmas.
That's how ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Dog had a full bag of food. And when we remember when we went through the crime scene photos, Greg? The full bag of food. The dog knows where his food comes from. He would chew through that bag of food. Instead, he chose to eat his owners. I mean, that's just one of the many craziness things.
Yeah.
Thank you for telling me there's people in here who do not know the case. Because, I mean, this is things that people, ridiculous things.
Here's a weird take from me. Okay, now maybe it's the area, maybe it's those people. The wrapping paper, the Christmas wrapping paper on those presents, maybe I saw it wrong. It was black and white.
What you didn't see wrong is how perfect and how well they looked. I mean, they looked like they weren't touched by the elements whatsoever, laying out there for how many weeks? Whether they're stacked up right or wrong, I mean, they would have been torn up in the winter, especially if they were all over the freaking yard. There would have been animals. It could have came. I mean, it's just, that's the insanity. Let's.
But you know what?
I want to go back to the presents and show you how perfect and pristine they look. After laying out there for how many weeks, Greg?
3.
3 weeks. This is the way that the wrapping paper looks. Are you kidding? You gotta be kidding me.
If somebody staged that, they might have thought through what color should I put on these, and there might have been a reason. Someone thinking they're going to be staging a scene doesn't want a lot of attention. They want packages to be there to be part of the narrative, but they don't want it to attract too much attention, so no one would notice really too much if they've been there too long. At least not people driving by who don't live there.
There was not one tear that I can even find in these packages after 3 weeks out in the winter.
Guys, think about this. And this is how criminals think, the deeper thinkers. They might have wanted to put those there, right, a little later, and they were afraid any color gleam would catch someone's eye and maybe make them get noticed. They did not want to be as noticeable walking up to place those there, so they chose black and white. It kind of blends into the background, blends in.
Oh, yeah, good point. Well, here's another thing. When the dog eats human remains, or obviously when a human becomes deceased, it lets go of his bowels. I'm sure the dog definitely dug into that because there's actually food in that. So a dog would definitely eat whatever. Anyway, what it says here is that the dog would have increased vomiting too. So what this is saying is that if this is true, the dog would have vomited everywhere too.
No, I don't see any dog vomit anywhere.
No, see, that's great.
That's the thing too. When a dog vomit, they go back to eat it up. So that's why everyone wants to.
Well, and then vomit again, and then eat up, and then vomit.
Yeah, you'd see it on the rug though. You'd see those stains.
Absolutely, you would. It's just it's just being a dog owner. You know, anyone who's a dog owner can attest to what I'm talking about here.
We got Pigeons Returns. G'day, Pigeons, in the chat room. How much weight had the dog lost when found? I can't imagine a distressed dog would have a great appetite.
That's what I was thinking. I forgot to say that.
From what I'm reading here, it'd be dead from eating human remains for 3 weeks. That's what I'm.
So, Greg, how much did the dog actually lose in weight when the dog was found and taken to the vet to checked up?
Well, I can only speculate on it, but very, very little from what I've heard from sources.
Yeah, because we don't know what he weighed to begin with.
Beforehand. Yeah, we don't know what it weighed beforehand.
But if he was,
we do have photos. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe eating humans, if it ate humans, it makes the dog not bark anymore because none of the neighbors heard it. But I digress. Let's finish the sucker up.
And there is a $14,000 check in that brown bag right there.
Really?
Yeah, from David's dad.
And Greg, what about the newspaper that was found in the letterbox?
Yes. So there should have been 3 newspapers. There was only 1 that was found there. There should have been 3.
Oh, the dog's been reading
Judy
the
probably
newspaper.
grabbed them and was reading them.
The dog took the papers and started reading, I guess.
We know he's a fast learner.
Well, he needed newspapers to read while he was sitting on the toilet, crapping in the toilet and flushing it to get water. I mean,
It's uncertain.
it is, and we have to do this because it's that ludicrous.
I was basically the owner of an indie label called Planet X Records. One of our actually Australian artists was the one who shared out that original Grey State trailer. That's how I saw the concept trailer. So he put me onto that. That was around the time the crowdfunding campaign was going. Me and my co-host Gaz, who currently does my Paradigm Review. It's kind of a movie TV review show that is over on my channel, youtube.com/PlanetXFilm. We did an old audio radio show together, and so we had reached out to David, or at least Grey State crew. We didn't really know it was David at the time, and then we kind of had a preliminary off-air discussion, which I told you about before, and then ultimately he agreed to come on our show for the radio show, and that is how, when you see the Grey State, their promo pamphlet there, that is for the reason why you see my logo, which is actually the logo that I owned and copyrighted Planet X Records, inside of that Grey State promo kit. So it actually had Grey State Press, so he had us listed on all of the radio shows he had been on, which the Alex Jones show is listed here when they were on InfoWars, and then it also has what my old radio show was at the time, Planet X Radio. As for what the funds were for, as I was saying, those are pre-production funds. That's just David's writing, prepping the script, travel back and forth from California, trying to get it in front of producers, trying to get it in front of studio.
But it looks like it was shut down or closed on October 6, 2012. But this thing raised over $61,000.
That was essentially startup money to get the concept trailer and the project in front of the right people. And if that comes down to that's simply money for David to live off of and work off of while he completes the final copy of the script, that actually makes sense as well. It's a totally normal process for indie films and Hollywood studio films as well. There's really nothing different about it for the most part, except for the fact that most people are just not lucky enough to get any independent funding at all, or get any studio backing whatsoever, which was not that I'm going to come on down here and guarantee that that's what it was, but we know the meetings David was having, so we know he was getting in front of the right people, at least up to what we know about the pre-production process. So a fairly usual pre-production process, I would say, except for the fact that due to the viral nature of the concept trailer, which is almost 4 million views, it's 3.9 million views right now, it was getting enough momentum to have people take notice, you know what I mean? Yeah, what I wanted to show you guys was the perk levels. I believe I can actually log into mine and look at mine. Mine was the Champion of Liberty, which was $1,000. So you can see that first perk there, which is just the Patriot Point. Unfortunately, it's all grayed out now, and it's kind of, you can't really see it too well. But that had all the rest of the options there. And there's everything for $20, $25, get a T-shirt. I don't know, signed copies of the script. If you look at other Indiegogo campaigns or other films, like I've done a Danny Trejo movie, I've done a Dolph Lundgren movie, they're all relatively similar, right? It's like, generally if you throw up a few thousand, you could be associate producer. If you throw up a bit more, you could be a co-producer. If you throw up like $5,000, you could be an executive producer, etc.
According to this, you are an associate producer, and you'll get a credit if the film ever gets finished. So, I mean, if they finish it 12 years from now, do you think that'll hold up?
I'd love to hear that. Danny Mason, if you were out there, whatever corner of the universe you were hiding in, I'd love to talk to you one of you guys. Mitch, hit me up. You guys should all have my email. I'd love to get an answer on that. I don't actually know, but I would love to get a definitive answer on that. I've been asking about that for over a decade now, so I would think so. You know what I mean? But again, who's to say? I mean, I don't really know the legal ramifications if if the IP passes off and changes hands, or if a studio picks it up, or I don't really know. I mean, they might just look at the crowdfunding campaign from 15 years ago, like, who the hell are these guys? I have literally no idea. But you know what I mean? My name's in a Rob Zombie movie. You know what I mean? There's been some haters that have had some fun with that, saying that I brought the donuts to the set. I actually wasn't on the set. It was just a regular crowdfunding campaign, just like this one. So it's a funny joke, but it didn't really have any reality grounding, you know?
Yeah, I can understand. That's par for the course, I believe.
Agreed.
So you got all those perks. Did you get all the perks that you were supposed to get? You were supposed to get a shout out on
I think so. I got the poster. I don't remember if they did the shout out on Twitter, because my Twitter tag has changed since. I got the poster. I had it framed. I think I still have it around somewhere in the garage framed. I got the t-shirt. I got the executioner mask. I got the ammo belt.
There's something signed. There's supposed to be a signed 8x10.
Oh, I did get that. I did get that. Where is that, man? I should have brought all this stuff out to show it to you. Oh, I think it's in my. You know what? I think it's in my scrapbook. Yeah, I think I have that. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool.
So signed by David, Mitch, and I think maybe Danny. And I had the list of all the contributors with their names and how much. So I think there was like one guy that threw down the 10 Gs that I was telling you about, and I think there was maybe two more that threw down 5K, and then there was like quite a few that threw down 1,000.
Here is the actual press kit here. Those are chemtrails up there, right?
I would say so.
I always thought this was a fascinating photo. Like, what are they all looking at here? What is supposed to be up there?
I would say the chemtrails.
It's really fascinating how much the story changes too. How all of this changes at some point.
I wonder how much is that as a result of David's meeting with the mics. You know what I mean? I don't know if they specifically told him to change plot elements, so he started gearing it to more to what would, you know, bring it to fruition, or if that was just a personal choice. I don't think there's really we don't really know much about, you know, that transition.
So this is all about getting that funding. The first Indiegogo campaign yielded $62,000,
which will be used to hire the necessary above-the-line professionals, lawyers, producers, marketing specialists, professional script analysis to propel Gray State through the conceptual stages into pre-production, which is basically what I said, not quite so eloquently. This initial effort will give the core Gray State creative team the resources to develop a professional production schedule, script breakdown, and begin seeking major financing and distribution deals. Check that out. Written and directed by David Crowley. Produced by David Crowley. Production design. Edited by David. Music composed by David. I've told Greg about that before. Visual effects by David. Sound design by David. Interesting.
Costume props probably too.
Yeah.
Since
The bullet exchange. Yeah, David is bullet exchange and Hothead. Yeah.
Who is on the team? I really like this one here. Who is on the team here? So we're going to get to know. And remember, this is the old team. Out with the old, in with the new. Yeah, so if you look at who is on the team here, David, writer, director, but Danny August Mason, concept, researcher, and actor. That's it.
So it has DP, Mitch is director of photography.
Okay.
Producer.
And producer.
Uh-huh.
And then guess who they're adding to the team?
Oh no. Here it goes. All down here from hill, folks. All downhill from here, folks.
Either way.
Domestic governance of the past few years. These unfortunate facts concern everyone, which is why we need your help.
That was one of the big things that I was looking for is what are the credits, and you know who is the crew, and you can see it's written and directed by David. I think that pretty much ends Danny August Mason's claim right there.
also have the executioner mask, which they obviously had copies of those, but the Masonic executioner guy with the apron that was chopping the heads at the end of the trailer, that as well.
Is it plastic? Is that mask a plastic?
Yeah, it's just I guess it's plastic. It's almost like paper, It's pretty flimsy. I don't know if that's exactly what they use. Maybe they use something a little heavier duty in the trailer, but it's the exact same look. It looks exactly like it.
That's one of the more creepier scenes, I think, in that whole trailer there.
Yeah, I found it. I think, actually you guys can head over to my channel, youtube.com, Planet X Film, and check out the deep dives that Greg and I did on both versions of the script. But if you revisit my interview with David, he actually came up with another device. He invented a device that would be used instead of just the, kind of stereotypical guillotine. And I believe, he didn't elaborate on exactly what that was. Of course, he wanted to, keep some things, be a surprise for when the film drops or whatever, a new trailer or whatever. But if I'm not mistaken, I think it was some sort of like multi-purpose guillotine. So it'd be more than one at a time. It'd be 5 or 10. When the pre-apocalypse comes, you gotta get it done fast. So it has to be more efficient.
Of course.
So, interesting tidbit there. David obviously had a music interest. We both essentially came from a music background. It's been so long since I listened to that interview, but I believe we discussed it live of how he's the one who produced that music, the Gray State theme music, and he wrote and composed music as we said. I think he is credited in the press kit, and obviously my independent hip hop label at the time was Planet X Records. So we had released a track with I think I've talked about this with Rick, I'm pretty sure. Released a track at the time with the artist Cannabis, who has a gold record, 2000, or Can I Bus, which is produced by Wyclef Jean. His next album was called 2000 BC. He was on Howard Stern show. He was friends with Mike Tyson. If you know hip hop, you probably know who Cannabis is, or at least you should. So my group, Guerrilla Alliance, we have a record called Empire of Fear. On that record, you guys can check it out on Spotify or whatever, should that be your cup of tea. And we have a track called Ordo ab Chao, Latin for Order Out of Chaos, featuring Cannabis. And it was just kind of the single we were promoting at the time. Our Empire of Fear concept is like very close to what the Gray State concept is. It's just a hip hop record, right? So we were discussing that, and I was like, even on the interview, David's like, hey, I don't really listen to a lot of hip hop personally, but he's like, I respect it. I think he had reached out, or somebody had reached out to Immortal Technique at the time, so they were going that route. And my group was loosely affiliated with Immortal Technique through the organization Guerrilla Republic. They're kind of just an activist organization that did merch and such. I believe they're still around. And so I sent him Order Ab Chao, and I was just like, hey, if you ever want to use this, whatever. And he was like, oh man, he was like, actually, you saw his response, I believe, Greg. Yeah. He was like, yeah, no, this is brutal. He was like, you guys mind if I use it for promos and such? And I was like, please do. So I had sent him that, and then what we were discussing on the interview was, I guess he said, there was one guy who did a kind of Gray State hip hop track. I think it might still be on YouTube. It wasn't great in my opinion. But what David was saying was he had the essentially music files of that Gray State theme song on Dropbox. And this is actually, this is quite an interesting story. I think people who are interested in the crowdfunding campaign and the concept trailer and whatnot would want to hear this. And so I was like, he's like, I'm willing to let people take that music and use it for samples to kind of do your own thing with. And the other MC in my group, Guerrilla Alliance, is Mac the Rebel from the Bronx, New York, so a Puerto Rican artist, and he's also a producer. So I was thinking like, oh man, this would be crazy, you know what I mean? Mac takes the music samples, he makes a new hip hop beat for us, and then we do this kind of like, Gray State like epic track, like essentially exactly what the Gray State concept trailer was, but a hip hop version using those exact samples. So when you watch the trailer, you're like, you hear, you can see the affiliation because it's, that similar kind of background music with the beat. So he sent me access to the Dropbox, and I did. I don't know if I should say this on air because I don't know the legal ramifications, but I did back up those music files which is interesting because when everything happened, how it happened to David and his family, somebody went into that Dropbox and they wiped the files. They started pulling everything out. So we don't know who that was or who deleted it, but I assure you that somebody definitely did, because when I don't know if you've used Dropbox before, Greg, I'm sure you have, but when you have a shared folder and files get added or deleted, you get notified. So I pretty much saw it happen in real time, and I'm like, okay, this is, you know, it was right around the time all those pages were posting weird stuff and everything got strange, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Right around that time, somebody went in the Dropbox and wiped out all the music, you know what I mean?
Wow, interesting. What happened here? Something went wrong. I guess you didn't get the executioner's mask, is what it says.
Yeah, so I think, and this is very, very common among crowdfunding campaigns, where you have like crap tons of perk people, and you got to ship out all these, you know, hard copy items out to people and whatnot. So I at first time around, I didn't get the executioner mask. And then what I actually wanted was the shock trooper mask. That I think it might be Danny who doubled as that character, because he played multiple characters in the concept trailer, obviously. But the shock trooper is kind of like that New World Order guy with the assault rifle, kind of like a SWAT looking dude with the backpack and the camo, and they have that kind of skull. It's like a bandana, but with the skull mask. You ever seen like bikers when they wear that that skull mask over their face while they're riding, so they don't get, you know, like dust and bugs in their mouth? That's what the shock trooper mask was. It was like that bandana, like black bandana with the white skull on it. Definitely, I think that's on the cover of the original Gray State poster. You know, it's like kind of like the New World Order dude with the AR.
Oh yeah. I remember that one.
Yeah. So people should be able to easily look that up. But I wanted the shock trooper mask. I think they ran out, and I was like, okay, I'll take the executioner mask. And then it didn't come out. But actually, I'm not sure if I sent you Mitch's response, but yeah, I think he hit me back and he was like, oh yeah, sorry about that. And then they resent it to me. And actually, I think I did show you guys that one. Luckily, I got the cordless headphones, guys, so I can actually step away. Sorry, Greg. That's unprofessional.
It's okay.
Your fan base will survive.
They'll be all right. My fans love me.
The Hot Greg fan club, baby. You got more fans than you want.
1-800.
Get your head chopped off. So you got the so that I do have, and then I mean, maybe at the end of the show or something, I'll grab the ammo belt if you guys care to see it, and I'll show it to you guys. That's one thing that's never been on air before. So
yeah, for sure, definitely want to check it out.
I got it back there in the closet. Yeah, but I showed you and Rick everything, guys. So I got two guys that can vouch for me off air, guys. It's, you know, it's a simulation. It definitely happened. You know, internet, man.
This was a email that David sent out, like I said, on Christmas Day, 2012. Merry Christmas. We know we're at a dizzying pace here. So this is interesting. The list of people that he sent this to is very interesting too.
Yes.
But this is pretty cool. Did they regularly send stuff like this, or was this just this one time?
They did send updates, if I remember correctly, when they post those Indiegogo updates. I think IGG automatically kicks it to you like an auto email, like your campaign received an update, like something like that. So I think you get both. Like obviously it's posted on the campaign, but I think you get an email output as well. But this actual one, that's the only one I recall, but there may have been one or two other short ones, you know, just kind of short email updates. This is how pre-production's going, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's pretty ominous there, right?
I always wondered where that image came from. Now it makes sense.
That's crazy. Nothing says Merry Christmas and will you marry me like getting dragged off by the New World Order of shock troopers.
Yeah. They must have done something very wrong, I'm sure, to just deserve that.
Didn't get vaxxed or something. I feel you.